What's going on, my YouTube family? Welcome to the Felonious Chef. It's your boy, Mark Anthony, here to talk to y'all today about a couple things. If this is your first time here, thank you for coming. If you've been before, welcome back. So today, we're going to do a little something that's a little bit different out of the norm. So usually, if you've been before, then you know that I kind of talk about things that affect felons and people that's returning back to society. That's kind of what I'm trying to help out around here. Because as me being a felon, as people that's been around. If you looked at my video, the last week's video, I talk about how half of the population of the United States has an arrest record, and about 25% of that, a little about 20% of that has felonies. So that's what I'm kind of here for, is kind of help my people in similar situations like me to try to overcome the steps and the beatdowns of society. You go do your time, you did your crime, you go do your time, but you come back home, but you're still facing penalties that was going to follow you for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, hit the like button, and let me know what's going on with you. If you know somebody in a similar situation, you want me to talk about certain concepts or certain ideas, let me know and I can get some research going on and I'll come back to you guys. Okay, so today we're going to talk about two books. Today's going to be a book review, okay? Usually I do some other stuff. You watch the first two videos, you kind of understand where I'm going with all of this, but today is going to be some reads, okay? Being in our world, in our society today, we really don't read a lot, but honestly, I heard this thing when I was younger. What's the best way to hide a secret? The best way to hide a secret is to put it into a book. Think about that, because they know people don't like to read. But so I did some reading for us up front, and I want to kind of talk about what I read, okay? So I read two books. The first book was written by Wes Moore. His author, his name is Wes Moore, came out of Baltimore. He kind of talks about his life and what he went through. The name of the book is called The Other Wes Moore, because it's actually talking about two guys by the name of Wes Moore. Okay, so it was two guys growing up in Baltimore, very similar situations, grew up without a father, okay? They grew up in poverty, essentially. One, they both, to be honest with you, they both made bad decisions early on in life. Okay, so now we're looking at situational choices. They both made bad decisions early on in life. Now, it was the outcome of those situations that they had that really determined their two destinies in life, okay? So if you haven't heard of the book, or since I'm reviewing the book kind of for you, let me tell you. One Wes Moore ended up being successful in life and ended up, he actually opened up the inauguration speech for Barack Obama, if I'm correct, which I think I am. The other one ended up serving life in prison, okay? Now, you think about that, you say, man, why, or whatever. I get all that. But, so what I'm coming here today to talk to you guys about is the fact that situational circumstances can control your future, okay? Like I said before, half of the nation has an arrest record, which, like I said before, isn't great, isn't good. And it's something that we really need to think about as a nation and what we can do to help everybody and overall. But, so we have these two guys, both named Wes Moore, both grew up in the area of Baltimore, and very similar situations. No father, grew up in poverty. They both had the system and their environment beating them down. They both made bad decisions. The successful Wes Moore, I'm going to use my hands so we kind of understand where I'm at with these two Wes Moores, because their names are both Wes Moore. So this hand is for the good Wes Moore, this hand is for the bad Wes Moore, okay? So Wes Moore on this side, he grew up without a father. He grew up in poverty. His mom struggled with a lot of things, getting them to where they needed to be. And so he ended up rebelling. He ended up hanging out in the streets. He ended up, hanging out with the guys, and he made some bad choices. His family kind of rescued him at a certain point, which is very important. Family is very important into your future. And you might look at your own future and say, well, I'm dead. I'm done. I'm just stuck in this rut. Ain't nothing I could do about it. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But you're going to keep staying in the same path that you're going. But you have to look about most times 9 out of 10. I would say you have a child, you have children, so you don't be so selfish and only focus on yourself. At this point, you have to focus on your future. If you're at the mind state where I'm done, this is all I can offer the world, this is all I can offer my life. Now you have to look for your future. Okay, so his parents and his grandparents sacrificed, and they put him into military school because he wasn't doing so good. And he goes on in the story and he talks about how when he first got to the military camp, he didn't like it. You know what I mean? He was like, I got to get up out of here. This ain't life. And it got to the point where he ended up calling home, and his mom was like, boy, all the sacrifices that we done for you, all the things that we did for you to get you to where you are, you need to take a chill pill and try to figure this out. So that was this Westmore. The other Westmore, very similar situation. To be funny about it, I didn't be funny about it, but to be clear about it, this guy, he actually excelled in school. He was actually very smart in school, and he was on the right path. And his older brother, who actually was in the drug game at the time, the story goes on that his older brother at the age of 14 had blocks. Like this, think about it, a 14-year-old kid owning multiple blocks, selling drugs, having an entity, running out of the projects, doing his thing. But when somebody that age doing that, it comes with violence, it comes with crimes, it comes with other scenarios. But his older brother was always on him, telling him, boy, you got to get yourself together. This ain't where you want to be. You might look at my money, my cars, my clothes, my shine, but you got something inside of you. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us. We all have like an initial shine inside of us, but we don't know how to really let it nurture and flourish it in the correct way because we don't have anybody around us to really show us the path. So don't worry about it. That's kind of why I'm here, to help people with those same problems to kind of find the path to let that shine. Okay, so we have one Westmore who did kind of okay in school, fell out of school. His parents put him on a different pedestal. Now we have another Westmore who's actually doing great in school, who's loving school, but for somehow the system, the world brought him down. Okay, now his mom was, not doing the best with her life, and no father in the house. Both of them, like I said, neither one had a father. Which, if you are a father and you're watching this, think about this. If you got kids out there, I'm sure you guys all heard the commercial, the infomercial, whatever, but the statistics really do show that a fatherless home, a fatherless house, a fatherless family, those kids suffer without the father. They tend to be more violent. They tend to drop out of school. They tend to run to the streets. They try to find that love and that life they're really looking for. So if you're a father, please stay at home, buckle it out, fix it with your girl, figure it out, stick with me, and I'm going to show you the steps you need to take to make your life successful, not only for you, but for your family. Okay? So these are the two stories of these two guys, all right? One ended up going to military school, became very successful, ended up joining the Army, did a bunch of missions, came home, opened up organizations, and started helping the community, and he became a great guy. The other one, he made bad choice upon bad choice upon bad choice. His very first really bad crime, he was shooting at somebody. He was dating this chick. He had a baby, young, with a baby, okay? And didn't really want to be in the child's life because he had no father in his life. His daddy, he went to go visit his daddy. The story goes, he went to go visit his father, and his father didn't even know who he was. He looked at the guy on the couch and said, "What up?" And the dude opened up his eyes, sleepy and drunk, and was like, "Who are you?" And his older brother was like, "Man, if I was you, I'd still on that dude." And he was like, "No, let's just get up out of here." So he ended up leaving. So he grew up without a father, but he had a child at a very young age, and instead of trying to focus at that moment on his kid and his family's life, he decided to still hit the streets and still do him. And by doing that, he ended up meeting with a girl, and the girl was lying to him about, "Oh, I stay with my cousin, but she's really staying with her guy." And the girl ended up coming over to this man's house, and they end up messing around, and the guy shows up. So the guy shows up, he opens up the door, and this dude's like, "Oh, that's what you..." So I think the story goes, she comes out of the house, but the guy's up there waiting. He walks into the door, and the guy sees, like, "Oh, this is where you've been at. You've been over here, And the guy walks up on him, and he punches him. He gets all upset because he got beat down in front of his house in his neighborhood. He runs upstairs furious, grabs the thing, chases the man all through the neighborhood, shooting at him. first bad choice. But luckily, he ended up, the boy didn't die. He didn't die. He ended up, being okay. So he made a mistake, but he was able to overcome the situation because he could have got life and he could have been locked up forever for that. Now we talking about Baltimore in the 80s. It was rough. Drugs was just popping off. Crack was the thing. And the government, as we all know about during that whole transitional and presidential status, it was war on drugs, war on crime. It was war on black people, but it is what it is. That was in the 80s. But anyway, so he ended up trying to gun this dude down, and luckily he got blessed. It didn't happen. He ended up coming back home. Now later on, then he tried to get right. This guy tried to get right. He tried to do a little school, do a little working, but it never really added up. He wasn't focused enough mentally to make it work for him. So he ended up going back out into the streets, and he ended up meeting up with his brother. His brother for his whole life had told him not to do this thing in this drug game, not to be one of these guys. Focus on school. You can make it. You smart. I know you can do it. But he didn't take heed to the lesson that he should have learned. Okay, in that book, I remember it talks about when this other West went to go interview this guy to make this book. He asked him about how he felt about certain things, about the situation that he was in. And he said, how do you feel? Do you feel like you're a product of the environment? And he's like, I'm not only a product of the environment, but I'm a product of the expectations, that they have on me, which kind of makes sense. If somebody expects you to be a doctor or a lawyer, if your mom or dad's a doctor or a lawyer, and they expect the children to be a doctor or a lawyer, there's a great chance that the child will end up being a doctor or a lawyer or something in an educated field that kind of, circumference the whole profession of the family. So he's like, I'm not only in a product of the environment, because people do become products of the environment. If your dad lives in a certain area and your mom is in the same area, you're going to probably growing up in the same area, which means you're going to be a product of that environment. And if that environment ain't good, then it's a high risk chance that you're not going to be good as well. So he ends up committing this crime. He goes to jail. He comes home, but he can't afford to provide. That is a scenario that we all have heard about. We all have dealt with maybe a loved one or maybe whoever in our life and in our family. They come home from these situations, these institutions, and the way the system is set up, there's no help for them. So they have to figure it out. But trying to figure it out on your own is almost impossible. You can ask me. I got a couple on my background, and it's almost impossible, and it came to the point even in my life. If you watch the very first video that I posted, I tried to kill myself. I tried to commit suicide because it got just really unbearable, and that's a whole nother story, But he was facing similar situations. He couldn't provide for his kids. He couldn't feed himself. He's like, man, this is gonna be my life, and he talked to his brother. His brother was like, well, I got a situation over here. Since you didn't listen to me and this is what you want to do with your life, come help me. And they committed a crime. This Westmore still says he wasn't even there when it happened. But they ended up shooting undercover. I ain't going to tell you the whole book, but they ended up shooting somebody. And they was on the run. And the Baltimore police finally caught up with him. And now he's serving life without ever going to come home. And these are decisions that was made by him based upon his situation. So, the book is very good in my eyes because it's a good read. Even if you just don't really like to read, it's a very good read. I mean, it'll keep you enticed. It'll keep you motivated to keep turning the pages. So Westmore did a very good job when it came to writing down his story and his baselines and how he wanted to convey his message. He did a very good job. I would definitely recommend the book. For me, I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up. I would give it, if I had to rate it on a scale out of 5, I would go with a 3.5 out of 5. And I only give it that kind of a rating because it'd be hard to make it perfect because nothing's going to be perfect for everybody's situation. But as far as motivational, as far as helping you maybe look at a situation that you're going through, maybe you could better read the situation that these two guys went through and how one overcame the situation and how one kind of failed to realize how he needed to overcome the situation that he was in to make himself better. So I recommend that book. It's called The Other Westmore, written by Wes Moore. Okay, and I'll maybe leave a link in the description. I'm not quite sure yet of where you can find the book, but I'll definitely, let you be able to see how the book looks and what's going on with it. I'll figure that out. All right. This is a very phenomenal book. The next book is The Master Plan. It's by Chris Wilson. A very phenomenal book. I really enjoyed the book. Now, the other book was based on true stories, and this one's based on a true story as well. But this one kind of sits with me at a little higher range of quality, only because it kind of touches my heart. Now, this book was actually forwarded by the first author, Wes Moore. So this guy, after he got through with his life, he got through what he wanted to write about. Wes Moore ended up reading about the story and forwarded, pretty much patted him on the back and told everybody that likes Wes Moore that if you like Wes Moore, then you will like this book as well. So this guy, Chris Wilson, he ended up making some bad choices in life. Not really by his own self. They were forced upon him as well. He lived in Baltimore, not too far from the other two Wes Moores that we talked about earlier. But his situation is a little different. He actually came from a somewhat good home. He talks about in the book how his mom, had a friend that had a Corvette, and his mom had the house with the pool, and all the kids wanted to come rock out with, them because, they was doing it, But he ended up living with his grandparents because his mom had to work 12-hour shifts to be able to afford that. So he didn't really live with his mom. So his only time being at home with his mom was like really during the weekends when he was in school, because he had to go to school out of his grandparents' address. And his mom ended up dating a cop, and the cop was abusive, was a rapist, was a drug user, drug abuser, and a spouse abuser. And he grew up around that kind of a household. He grew up around fear. And he watched his mom go from this great role model, this lady who would teach him about women and teach him how to approach girls and how to dress and how to become a man, essentially what we need to ended up becoming a victim of circumstance by this cop. And so during that whole situation, during that whole life, ended up changing his mom. His mom got strung out on drugs, so now she became a drug abuser, and it made the whole perfect ideal life fall down. It crumbled it all. And him being a child, as most black men without a father, without a parent, they end up thinking it's their job to provide for the family, which isn't fair upon a child. So that's what he ended up doing. He ended up trying to provide for the family and provide for himself, and it made him fall out of school and fall out of love of education, and all those things ended up falling to the streets. And we all know being in the streets, you become a victim of the streets. You become a circumstance of the streets. And some of those choices ended up leading him to a life-term sentence in prison at the age of 16 years old. And when it happened, he felt lost. He felt devastated. I mean, how would you feel? 16 years old, and you're a criminal. Not only you're a criminal, and not only are you in jail, but you have a sentence of life at 16 years old. So when he went to prison, like most people I would really expect, they just gave up. He gave up. He's like, man, I'm never getting out of here. This is my life. Because when he went in, it was very shortly after that his mom and his family, his sisters, everybody just told him, you ain't never getting out, Chris. Sorry, but it is what it is. We ain't got no money for you. They didn't come visit him. They didn't send him no care packages. He was just in there. Most people, I've been in jail, most people at that age that go in like that with no family, they nut up. It's just, the term we use, they nut up. And they flip out. He called them Bamas, the loud mouths, the ones that want to sing all night, the ones that want to beat on the walls, the ones that just don't really care, because what you going to do? You say something crazy to them, not only they going to want to fight you in the bathroom, and if you beat them, they going to come back with a knife because now they mad. They ain't got nothing to lose because, they got life. And he became that kind of a person while he was locked up for a little bit. And he ended up meeting a guy. He ended up seeing another person in there who was reading books and studying and like trying to better his life, better himself. And he's like, man, this dude is an idiot. That's what Chris said about him. This guy's an idiot. Like, what is he doing? Like, he ain't never getting out. Why he care what kind of clothes do he got? Why do he care what he look like? Why do he care, what his impression, or people's impression of him? But the guy did. The guy was very studious. The guy had a plan, to better himself no matter what. And once Chris realized that, Chris took on the same ideology. I'm going to better myself no matter what. And honestly, as a felon returning home, that is the ideals you need to really implant into your body. I need to better myself no matter what. Let that sink in. No matter what, I got to be better than the next guy. And that's what Chris did. He spent years and years in bettering himself and making his master plan. He's always asked himself, what is my end goal? You ain't going nowhere. But you know what? His master plan, and because he broke through the not superstition, but he broke through the stereotypes. He broke through you a murderer. Okay, you killed somebody. You deserve to be in jail for life. He broke through all of that and proved himself. This man, I ain't gonna tell the whole story, but this man did some miraculous stuff. He's out now, but they still talk about him in jail. He's done so much for the community, and he was always beat down. Like his whole struggle, he writes about his whole struggle. This man went on a 20-year struggle of bettering himself. And even when he got out, like with the parole board, they didn't believe him. They beat up on him. They sent him back, and they did everything they could to really keep him down. And I know that's how a lot of us feel. We come home like they want to just keep us down. They don't cut us no breaks. We can't get a job. We can't even vote. There's so much stuff that people think about when they come home, like after the crime, after the time, but they're still felons. They're still fighting the stereotypes. They're still fighting the situations where, they got to constantly prove themselves. And that's what he dealt with for so long of his life. He had to constantly prove himself. Like I'm telling you, his mama left him. Everybody left him. He was in there by himself. He said it was a point in his life, his socks weren't even socks. He wore the same socks for so long that it was just strings holding hose together because they weren't even socks no more. You know what I mean? And even when he got paroled, his parole officer, he was in a halfway house, and one of his therapists, counselor, whatever, she didn't even want him to succeed. He tried to do something good. He was going to school. She's like, I don't know what you're going to school for. You're a felon. You're going to do nothing but sweep floors and become a janitor. But he was like, no, I got a master plan. This man taught himself Spanish, Italian, and he started learning Chinese. This man built a business while inside of jail. You know what I mean? He built a business inside of jail, became an entrepreneur inside of jail. I ain't gonna tell you all his secrets. You got to get the book. The book is worth reading. It will teach you so much, and it will show you so much about how to get your master plan together and think about your end game after it all. This man got out of jail, and within 2 years, he was a college graduate because he already had put the time in jail, got his GED and his associates in jail, went to college. When he came out, having to walk to school and whatever, rode a bike for a year, whatever he had to do, he was focused on the game plan. And that's what I took out of this book, which I would give a 4.5 out of 5, thumbs up, because if you really read it and if you're really sincere about changing your life, just reading this book will help you and guide you to the point where you understand that if he can do it, I can do it. He talks about a point in this story where Barack Obama was throwing a ceremony at the White House to congratulate African Americans that bettered themselves and bettered the community around them, because that was his thing. It wasn't just about bettering myself, it was about bettering who else is around me, how to help them fight the situation so they don't have to maybe struggle as hard. The White House was throwing a ceremony. It was throwing a ceremony. And they asked him to come to give him the award. He goes to the door to get inside of the place. They tell him, we did a background check on you. You can't come in. He's like, what? I'm literally here. I literally got invited because of my background, because I went from a murderer to a free man to an entrepreneur to a businessman to a social elitist to help everybody else around me, to the point where I got recognized by the President of the United States, and I'm at the door and you telling me I can't come in. He shows the true life of a felon and what they have to go through in life. It took him. He ended up getting in. It took him 2.5 hours before he was able to get in, But he was only able to get in because he had put himself in a situation, and he linked up with the right people to the point where he was able to call one of his mentors and tell them what was going on. And the mentor, because the mentor put themselves in right situations and didn't take no's for answers and didn't listen to the outside sources, didn't listen to the people that constantly told them, you ain't gonna be able to do it, you ain't nothing, you a felon, you might as well give up. They didn't listen to him. So the mentor was able to threaten the White House, literally threaten the White House to call CNN to have them write a story over what was going on. And you know what? It worked, and they let him in. And I think about that because it reminds me of, like, I don't know nobody from CNN. Who would I call? But you know what? If we take the right steps and put ourselves in the right positions, and we make a master plan, and we have an end goal, and we understand what it takes to reach that end goal, you never know who you might meet and who you might know. You never know what paths you may cross to get you to the point where you now can become a boss, a successful person with as many stripes on your back as Jesus Christ took on the cross. Very good read, very good book. It's called The Master Plan, again, by Chris Wilson. And I'm also recommending The Other Wes Moore by the author called Wes Moore. All right, so that's about it for me today. That's gonna wrap it up for me. I just wanted to share these little 2 books with you guys. If you enjoy this kind of content, just let me know. I keep it rolling. I got some other great books to read. Some books by Malcolm Gladwell that I'm gonna be throwing into the mix real soon here. I'm thinking about maybe creating something called Dinner Time and maybe sitting down with you guys and going over some good reads and some good things for you. And we going together help this nation, because we all know a divided nation won't make it, but together we can. So I always keep that in mind, and let's do this together. All right, thank you so much. This is the Felonious Chef. I'm signing out, and you have a good night.